Whoop whoop, howdy y'all, welcome back to another episode of the Bible in 1 year with the Preacher's Husband. Today we're going through 2 Kings chapter 18, verses 1 through 8. Then we're going to jump over to 2 Chronicles, and we're going to look at chapter 29 through 31. And then we're going to throw in Psalm 48 right there at the end for good measure. Now tomorrow we're going to go through Hosea chapter 1 through 7. So let's get started with today. Now, if you remember this guy from previous videos, this is King Hezekiah. And 2 Kings chapter 18 verses 1 through 8 gives us a little bit of background about King Hezekiah, but not a whole lot. Alright, it says that he was 25 years old when he became king. He reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abi, who was the daughter of Zechariah. So he is actually related to Zechariah by marriage. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. Don't see that very often with a king, any of these kings for that matter, but he did really good. He actually did as David did. He did lots of good stuff. He relied on God, and it says here in verse 5, not one of the kings of Judah was like him, either before him or after him. He remained faithful to the Lord. Wow. Because there were a bunch who remained faithful for a while. Then towards the end of their reign, they were like, I don't need him anymore. I got this. And then they did some bad things. But the Lord was with him wherever he went. And wherever he went, he prospered. So, let's flip over to 2 Chronicles. Let's get a look at this here. 2 Chronicles, chapter 29. King Hezekiah. Well, Hezekiah was the 12th king of Judah. He was devoted to God. He was protected miraculously from the Assyrian king. And just as it looked as if things were so bad that they could never be set right again, Hezekiah became king and led Judah in returning to God. Returning to God. That is so good. That's good stuff. All right, and with the highest compliment here in Chronicles, the chronicler compares Hezekiah to David because because of his pursuit of righteousness. And right off the bat here in 2 Chronicles 29, he starts rebuilding the temple. And he gets all these Levites gathered back up together, and the priests gather back up together, and he consecrates these Levites, tells them to go clean themselves, and they did what they were told, and they got all together, and they started cleaning the temple. So they cleaned all this stuff up, they got everything squared away, all the utensils, all the stuff all fixed up and consecrated the way it's supposed to be, and then the next day Hezekiah gets up early, and he gathers all the city officials, and he goes to the Lord's temple. And they brought 7 bulls, 7 rams, 7 lambs, 7 goats. They told the priests to offer them up on the altar of the Lord, and they do. And they did this to make atonement for all of Israel. For all, the king said that the burnt offering and the sin offering were for all of Israel. Hezekiah stationed the Levites in the Lord's temple with cymbals, harps, and lyres, according to the command of David. Because you remember David, he was all about that music. So he was all about that music, And they worshiped. So this is the return of worship to the temple. People started worshiping in the Lord's temple again, and it was established. Then we get to chapter 30 of 2 Chronicles, and we're talking about the Passover. That's right. Hezekiah decided, and they all decided together that they were going to have them a Passover. So he sent letters to Ephraim and Manasseh to come on to the Lord's table, the temple in Jerusalem, to observe the Passover of the Lord of Israel. But it wasn't at the right time. They observed it in the 2nd month. This was because they weren't able to observe it at the appropriate time. There was not enough priests that were consecrated, and the people hadn't gathered together in Jerusalem, so they couldn't do it until all that had happened. So that all happened in the 2nd month. So they got all that together, and they returned to the Lord. They did this Passover, but it did go exactly as planned. The people that came, clearly they had been out of the loop on what was right and what was wrong, how to consecrate and clean yourself properly before you go to the temple, before you do these things. So a large number of people were ritually unclean when they started doing this. But don't worry about it. Hezekiah interceded on their behalf. Get that intercession, the interceding, going to God on behalf of somebody else and getting involved and saying, listen, God, please do this for these people. This is what Hezekiah did. He went to God and said, May the good Lord provide atonement on behalf of whoever sets his whole heart on seeking God, the Lord, the God of his ancestors, even though not according to the purification rules of the sanctuary. So the Lord heard Hezekiah and healed the people. This is more evidence that prayer works, folks. It does. It works for you. It works for you interceding on behalf of others. It works. And the Levites did good stuff, though. The Levites did their part as best as they could. It said they performed skillfully before the Lord. So they did some good stuff and they ate. The whole congregation decided to observe 7 more days. They had so much fun. They had a good old time. They said, you know what, we're going to do this for 7 more days. So they just kept on going. The reason why they did that, though, was kind of important. Hezekiah and a number of his officials contributed numerous animals to be offered as sacrifices during this time. This eased the economic burden on some of the members of the congregation, and it also contributed to the joy of the celebration. So, by popular acclaim, they decided just to keep on going. So it says, Hezekiah and all these folks is feeding us, we're going to keep on eating. So they did. But after this was over, something really important happened in chapter 31. Look at all them hammers and axes, and them busting up all them statues. What are they doing? They are removing idolatry. They're getting rid of all the idols. When all this was over, all of Israel that had attended went out to all the cities, and they broke up all the sacred pillars, chopped down the poles, tore down the high places and altars throughout Judah and Benjamin, as well as Ephraim and Manasseh to the last one. Then all the Israelites returned to their cities, each to their own possession. Hezekiah reestablished the divisions of the priests and the Levites, the burnt offering, the fellowship offerings, their ministry, giving thanks for praise at the gates. All of this stuff was all restored and reestablished. In chapter 31, verse 4, it says, He told the people who lived in Jerusalem to give a contribution for the priests and Levites so that they could devote their energy to the law of the Lord. When the word spread, the Levites gave liberally of the best of the grain, new wine, fresh oil, honey, and of all the produce of the field. And they brought in an abundance, 1/10 of everything. As for the Israelites and Judites who lived in the cities of Judah, they also brought 1/10 of herds and flocks. And it goes on and on. He reestablishes the tithe for the good folks. And then for the priests too, so the priests can focus on being priests and not have to worry so much about all the other stuff that goes along with living. Like, where am I going to get my next meal? Where am I going to get food for my family? For these folks around here? Where's all that going to come from? Well, he fixed that. So we're going to move on to Psalm 48. Psalm 48 in the CSB is titled Zion Exalted. And in the New King James Version, the title is The Glory of God in Zion. This is pretty interesting. It says a psalm of the sons of Korah. And one thing that I found interesting is there was a lot of reflections of Isaiah in here that we just got done reading some of. Verse 6 in particular, trembling seized them there, agony like that of a woman in labor. Have we heard that before? Yep, we heard that in Isaiah multiple times. We heard that same example of pain. As you wrecked the ships of Tarshish with the east wind. Didn't we just read about that last night? Those ships of Tarshish. The destruction of the ships of Tarshish, it may actually refer to an actual event. 1 Kings chapter 22, verse 48 is what most scholars cite. Or this verse could just use Tarshish as a representative of the enemies of God, as it does in Psalm 72, verse 10. So you pick. Which one do you think it is? Do you think it is an actual event? Or do you think that this is just representative of the enemies of God? I hope this has touched you. If it has, click the like button, the subscribe button, the follow button. Give me a rumble if you're following me on Rumble there. And activate your notifications so you can get notified the next time I upload a video, which will be tomorrow, for another episode of the Bible in 1 year with the preacher's husband. We'll see you then.